Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 15 of All Things Metaphysical podcast with Kelly and Gail. I got it right this time.
Yay.
Gail part.
I am the Kelly part.
So
We
one
could
of the things,
we could go with kale. I think kale's a nice thing. We could be kale.
and Gail's very healthy for you.
There you go.
So Kelly and I were talking before the show, and one of the things we've noticed in the last few weeks is we've had a theme about shamanism come up. Like I think it was 2 weeks ago, I channeled a shaman from the Amazon, and then we were talking about some other things shamanistic related. So today we thought we'd start talking about soul retrievals.
Yeah.
So Kelly, I'm going to let you start that conversation.
People get really scared off by the topic soul retrieval.
Mhm.
It just terrorizes people for some reason. I don't understand why. But what happens is as we go through our lives, particularly if you are a very sensitive person, you're going to experience trauma. And what is traumatizing for you may not be traumatizing for somebody else. And what's traumatizing for them may not be traumatizing for you. But the belief in shamanism and in other lines of thinking as well is that when we are severely traumatized, we kind of lose isn't the right word. It's more like misplace
Mhm.
a piece of our soul. A piece of us sort of breaks off and runs away, runs and hides usually. And we can continue on. And quite often we don't even realize that that has occurred. But if you find yourself at a point in your life where you kind of don't, you feel it, you really do feel it, I think, at least subconsciously, if not consciously, you feel like something's missing.
Mhm.
You feel like I'm not quite whole. And there's really a feeling of I've misplaced myself. You
Mhm.
know, who am I? Where am I? What am I doing? And soul retrieval brings all those bits and pieces of you back together and reintegrates them into who you are in the present timeline. Quite often we find that early traumas happen. I have had people who have lost a piece of themselves as an infant.
Mhm.
So there is no age at when time, when it might start. There's no timeline for how long it takes you to realize that piece is gone. Wherever you are is where you're supposed to be. But in soul retrieval, literally the shaman and the person they are working with go into a trance,
Mhm.
usually through a drum. You go into another realm, the shaman does. Normally, they would take you with them.
Mhm.
Sometimes people refuse to go, in which case it makes more work for the shaman, but it still works. Um, and the shaman will go and collect the different bits and pieces. And of course, there's a big, long, process in that. But we're not attempting to teach you soul retrieval now. We're just explaining what it is and what's entailed. The thing that people forget about, or maybe they were never taught about, is when you reintegrate those bits and pieces that you lost through trauma, you have to accept, you have to now heal that trauma. So many times, people who have lived very traumatic lives require more than one session to retrieve all those bits and pieces.
Mhm.
Because to do it all at one time would be overwhelming.
Mhm.
I've had clients um, who have been reintegrated with their bits and pieces that they lost. And then they're in bed crying for 3 days and they're calling me, why did you do this? How did you let me do this? And know that it's healing ultimately. Um, we have someone that asked, is that like shadow work? No.
Can I share though? I've actually had some soul retrievals with a shaman.
Mhm.
Being that, I can see, hear, and feel things, while we were on the journeying part to go get my missing parts, I found more traumatic than my missing parts coming back because I was seeing everything that happened and why I chose to leave those parts
Right.
behind. And, and then they blew them back in. And to me, that wasn't the hard part. The hard part was seeing all the trauma. And, it was very cathartic because I think I cried through the whole soul retrieval. And one of them was a Native American life. So it was just really interesting. So, can you maybe speak to that about how just the journeying part is traumatic before you even get the soul pieces back?
In journeying, there are different levels
Hmm.
of, for lack of a better term, reality, different realms, different dimensions that a shaman will go to. And once you open that door to those realms, if you are not prepared for what you're going to see, that can be very, very traumatic. There are other beings that want nothing more than to swallow your soul completely and have you cease to exist. And a shaman will know how to navigate. There's a lower, a middle, and an upper realm that most souls go to.
Hmm.
When you get more advanced, there are other places too. But once you open that door and you go through, uh, anything can happen. And often it does happen. When you are going down paths, I enter through a tree,
Hmm.
and what you're doing is you're entering another realm,
Hmm.
and I follow the tree down and go through the roots and then get into another dimension. And when I have drug people with me, I have heard them screaming the entire way because they're not understanding, even though I explained it to them
Hmm.
what was going to happen. So there's something about, yeah, 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 I know. Okay, I'm fine, I'm fine. And then when you see it and you hear it and you're in the midst of it, it can be terrifying.
I
Um,
always think about the movie What Dreams May Come. It's not a shamanic journey per
right.
se, but that traveling and having to go to different levels and having to retrieve things in order to move to different levels.
Yeah.
Y- I think they do a really good job. I know it's not the same thing, but it's a really interesting movie if you haven't seen that to see how the journeying is done.
It really is. And in that movie, it wasn't that the one where someone committed suicide.
Mhm.
Um, there is a place where people who have committed suicide go,
Mhm.
and it is not a happy place. There are caves with lost souls.
Mhm.
Often, when we lose a piece of ourselves, a piece of our soul shatters. That's where it ends up because it doesn't know where else to go.
Mhm.
And sometimes pieces just run, they're just trying to get away from the trauma. And what they ultimately do is end up in a place with a whole lot more trauma. And it takes a very, very experienced, dedicated shaman in that instance to go and help a soul in that situation.
Mhm.
Uh, I have had, it was a tiny soul. It was like a 2-year-old self that someone had lost. And it was in a cave of despair. And when you go in, if it had not been for my guide being with me, and a shaman will always take a guide.
Mhm.
It's usually an animal. It can be an extraterrestrial. It can be something else. Always takes a guide. If it had not been for my guide, it was such a horrible place. It was just like I felt my arms starting to freeze. I felt myself starting to turn into a statue, and I would have been there.
Mhm.
And my guide pulled me out. So it's not something to be taken lightly. There are other ways other than through shamanism to do a soul retrieval.
Mhm.
That people work with Archangel Michael all
Mhm.
the time for soul retrievals. You can call in different saints for soul retrievals. You can even, I know someone who actually works with beings from another realm completely to
Mhm.
do soul retrievals. And it's all what speaks to your soul, what method is going to work for you.
And I don't know why I need to talk about this because it's not really metaphysical related, but they want me to talk about it a little bit from the psychological perspective. because what we're talking about is the energetic journey to get those pieces back. And when
Right,
you see people who have a lot of trauma, they also have a lot of dissociation. They have a hard time staying grounded and in the present moment. And in the psychological field, it's called parts work, and that
right,
you're trying to reconnect all the parts. So the reason that I wanted to talk a little bit about that is it just depends on what modality you're the most comfortable with. There's all kinds of ways to do everything. And so I just, for somebody who's going to be watching this, needed to hear that they're doing it through the psychological path, and
right,
there's no right or wrong way. Sometimes you need to do both. You need to do the psychological and you need to do the energetic in order to become whole. So,
right, right. And there's no, if you talk to someone else about their journey,
mhm,
there's no, this is the way it always works every time. There's just not. Sometimes I go back to the same place over and over and over and over. Other times it's like they take me somewhere completely different. And I'm like, whoa, what is this? But it still works. It just, I feed off of the energy of the person that I'm working with, as well as where I'm taken by my guides to do my work.
mhm,
So it's always different. It's never boring. Every once in a while, I will be surprised. I had a client, I have a Native American rug that was given to me by the person who trained me. And that's what I lay on.
mhm,
And I usually spread it so that there's room for both of us, the client and myself. And I had just settled, and I had this little tapping on the top of my head. I want to come home now. And her piece, it was a 13-year-old piece of herself, was right by her, was always there, could not figure out how to be reintegrated. So that's all she needed me for,
mhm.
was to blow this little piece back into her body and reintegrate it. And that's the easiest journey I've ever had. It's like right here.
Mhm,
But um, that's very, very rare. Very, very rare. Um, Someone mentioned shadow work,
mhm.
and soul retrieval is not shadow work at all. But since the question was raised, I feel like we need to talk about shadow work.
Mhm.
Um, I always define shadow work as working with the deeper, darker parts of yourself, things that maybe you've repressed, things that have happened to you that you've done or that have been done to you, and you're trying to work through it. You may not have lost a piece of your soul doing, that caused you to need to do shadow work.
Mhm.
Usually, shadow work is not as serious. It is very, very serious, but maybe it's not serious to the point where you've lost yourself. I have known someone that caused enough trauma to themselves doing shadow work that they traumatized themselves and lost a bit. But normally, shadow work is more working with things on this plane,
Mhm.
working with how you're feeling, working with how you've been in the past, working on forgiving yourself for things that you've done that you maybe shouldn't have done, or that you've beat yourself up for doing for the last decade. Things like that. That's more shadow work. How would you describe shadow work?
Well, it's really interesting because as you've been talking, they're giving me this whole lecture right now, and it's it's not about shadow work or light work. It's that we're stuck in living in duality. So that's how we see everything is light or dark. But what we're moving to is outside of duality, and that we're one being. And it's like, how do you incorporate all those parts of yourself? Because what they're saying is the shadow work is past life stuff that's carried over into this lifetime that you haven't been able to reconcile.
Right,
And
right,
so it's very, very deeply. And as you start to do that work, whether you are aware that you're recalling past lives, they're saying that's where all of that comes from. And so it's all about, if we're light beings or spiritual beings in a physical body, and we have all that knowledge with us of every lifetime we've lived, no matter where it's been. How do we integrate that into one cohesive unit? So I don't know why, but it's not coming from me because
No,
they're
I know. That's very interesting because, last week we kind of got on the past life thing.
Mhm,
And I think, and I've known a couple of people um, who have transitioned and returned. And what I have noticed about those people, their personalities are very much the same.
mhm,
If you were um, given to violent outbursts in one life and you don't take the time to do the shadow work and heal that, guess what's going to happen when you come back? And I've seen it in my own family.
mhm.
I've seen it with a friend that transitioned, and then her daughter had a daughter, and boom, exactly, carbon copy, looks exactly the same, acts exactly the same, and that's kind of what you were just saying. It comes from past lives, but if you don't do the work,
Mhm.
you're going to keep repeating it.
So for those of you who are watching us live, what are your comments with this discussion of soul retrievals or past life work or integrating yourself into a whole being? We'd love to hear what you guys are thinking about listening to this while we're talking about it. But it's just again so interesting. Like I wasn't aware that I was going to get all that information and pass it along to everybody. So it's just so interesting to me how spirit chooses to bring it in while we do these podcasts. Because I don't think much before we do them. I'm just here and present and ready to talk about whatever we're going to be talking
Yeah.
about for the day or wherever we're going to get steered to go. But I'd never thought about any of that stuff before. So it was just
It's good
really
information though. They always come through very timely.
well, which leads me to also, we were talking about resetting energy.
Yeah.
So maybe that would be a really good segue into, kind of how you're seeing what's happening in the world right now.
I get information from my daughter says galaxies far, far away. Um, but but
I like to call it the cosmos.
yes, it we're in a period right now where things are being reset. Energy is being reset. We've gone through a lot of upheaval, and it's come to a point where kind of the people who have risen up, the people who have been in 5D for way longer than people have been talking about a 5D
Mhm,
situation, are now we're sort of on a plateau right now. And we're kind of integrating everything we've learned, all the energy fluxes we've had, all of everything that we've gone through right now. So it's sort of a time to reset. This is our new normal. Your energy, your vibration right now, this is your new baseline. And when I've been in meditation thinking about that, I'm like, whoa, that's a long way down. And it's just we've gone so far so fast that I
mhm.
think many of us need that reset period.
We're doing the time warp.
Yeah.
So some of the feedback that we got about the conversation we just had about soul retrievals is that retrievals is even deeper than just being a part of a past life regression.
Um, they're different. They're
And
different.
and then I just keep thinking of how many past lives come to me. I feel they were through dream sequences, but or was it from the Akashic records or as I awakened? Did I just revisit them to deal with the same trauma over and over?
That's possible.
Mhm. It's when I was first started on the metaphysical path, the first class I took, there was a lady who read the Akashic records, and I just went in so skeptical. And I've always had this pain in the back of my neck, and I always knew that I died in the Holocaust in a gas chamber. I've always known those things. So she says to me, "You were killed by a guillotine, and you died in the Holocaust in a gas chamber." And I'm like, because I hadn't said it out loud.
Right.
And I'm just like, wow, there's something to this because there's no way, that they, unless somebody else was present with us, because like I said, I didn't say it out loud. And they said the only way she's going to believe anything that you say is if we answer these questions for her.
Yeah. Maybe we should talk about the Akashic records for a little bit.
Hmm.
If you've never been there, it's a really tough thing to wrap your head around. It just is. But when you do anything with the Akashic records, make sure you're protected. Make sure you are wrapped in the brightest, most divine white light you can. Because what I have found personally, and in talking with many others, you can really meet some negative entities there. We'll go with negative entities. And it can be terrifying because they can actually use that as a portal to come back with you. And you don't want that. Nobody wants that.
It's really interesting because my experience with the Akashic records is every time I've gone from the first time I took a class and went to the Akashic records, I see the Lords of Akasha in a semicircle protecting and guiding me, and that they are always with me and have always been with me since day one. So I guess I never felt like anything. And I always see them like King Arthur times, like knights, the round table. That's how I always see them dressed. Yeah. So,
I think you're very lucky. But I also think it depends on the lessons that you have. It depends on past lives. And it also depends on things that happened earlier in this incarnation.
mhm.
But I know many people who have come back from the Akashic records and called me because I did not describe what I saw, did not describe who I met. And one was a teacher of mine, and one was a friend of mine that was in the same class. And the teacher came back and said, "So, Satan's a rather nice looking guy, very well dressed, 3-piece suit. Yeah." And it's no horns, no hooves, no, he's definitely not a goat. And everyone that has told me their battle, for lack of a better phrase, in the Akashic records has described in the same way. And I think that is just fascinating because when I was a kid, I had violent night dream, horrible night terrors. I would wake up screaming. I was dueling with a sword with the devil. And it was from when I was a little bitty kid. And one of the things that I didn't know until years and years and years later was someone very close to me in my physical life and actually did some satanic rituals when I was little, and I was present. And it was sort of, the darkness globs onto the brightest light in the room, and that was apparently me. So my entire life I've been doing battle with the devil. And the people that have described the same things that I have seen have also very, very similar past, which I find really interesting. It's like, what is this? Our trial? Is this, but it's interesting. But be careful when you go in, make sure you.
Absolutely. Like I always say prayers of protection too before I go into them. And then I was taught a way to go into the records. So I remember the first class I took on the Akashic records. I think we talked about this in one of the podcasts. I don't think the woman really knew what she was teaching. Gave us like a little paragraph to read. And I, of course, say, well, this is what I'm seeing. There's this big building. There's these guys dressed up like knights. She's like, you can see all that? And I'm like, yeah, they're right there.
Yeah.
You're teaching the class. Shouldn't you be able to see that? So just really interesting.
What I've learned is that people see differently.
Mhm.
I see like it's a person, like it's you standing there. That's how
Mhm.
clearly I see. But some people only see in their mind's eye. They don't really physically see. I can do both, but I see. Even when I'm going through other realms on a journey, I still see.
So, guess what spirit wants us to talk about now? You ready?
Mm, sure.
They want us to talk about being seers. What does that mean? Because apparently both of us have had many lifetimes where we have been seers.
And have been killed for it too.
Well, and maybe we should spend a little bit of time talking about why that's for a lot of people in this lifetime. They don't want to tap into their gifts, they don't want to use their abilities because they have been tortured or killed for what they knew how to do in the past.
Right.
So, talk
And
about going full circle, talk about soul retrievals. For a lot of people, it's bringing that piece back to yourself that you're safe in this lifetime.
I remember when I was very young and I would know things were going to happen before they did. And that's just the way I put it. Yeah, don't do that because something's going to happen and this is going to happen. That, and they would look at me like I was strange, and which I am, that's okay. But it, it came to a head when a relative asked me, "What do you think I should do?" And I looked him dead in the eye and I said, "You are not going to burn me to death again in this life." And he went, and I went, "Whoa, where did that come from?"
Mhm.
And it was really frightening. But I have met my executioners in my life and I have recognized them for that. And you probably have too. And
Mhm.
what do you do with that? It's like, oh, I see who you were. I'm not sure I should be talking to you right now. But there are so many people who are right now waking up and they're fine. It's like a surrender. It's
Mhm.
like, okay, fine. I'll go with it this time. Because that's what it feels like. It doesn't feel like being defeated. It feels like, okay, I give up. I'll go do it your way.
Well, I think the other piece of this that we haven't really talked about is soul families and soul tribes, and that you generally travel with the same people. So, the people that you're in this lifetime with, you've been in lifetimes with before and had very different roles. Like,
Yeah,
do you have people in your life where you just get this like feeling and you don't know why, like they did something to you, but they've not done something to you in this lifetime? Because probably that was your soul contract in the last lifetime where maybe they hurt you, maybe they killed you, maybe they did something horrific to you, and maybe this lifetime is about healing that. So, I know there's people who don't believe in past lives and things like that. And one of the comments that we just got is the person said, I never felt like I've been this old before. I've also gotten that a lot as well. It's like, I don't know what to do with myself. I don't think I've ever been this age before.
right. Yeah.
Nor did I think I was gonna live to this age in this lifetime. Like, I remember growing up, like, I'm at this point now, and I'm like, I never as a kid, most people dream about what they're gonna do and how they're gonna do it, what they want in their life. I never had any of that. I never thought I would, like, make it past my teens. So,
No, I always thought I would die very young.
mhm,
And now that I'm no longer very young, I'm like, what is this? You know?
yeah. So, I mean, all that stuff that people don't talk about or those fears that people have, they come from somewhere, they're real. And instead of trying to push it away and pretend that you're not having it, maybe the trick is to embrace it and said, what is this trying to teach me?
Right, right. Yeah.
So,
That's I've every person in this life that has stabbed me in the back, really, has
mhm,
done it before. And I kept giving them another chance and giving them another chance and giving them another chance. And this time I'm like, you know what? No more chances.
mhm.
Get one chance, one and done. And that's the way I've been this life. And I've talked to so many people that say, well, you should be more forgiving. You should, everybody deserves a second chance. No, they don't get one.
Because this isn't their second chance, this is their 100th chance.
It's like, no, I'm done. And that perplexes people. I had someone actually this morning say, well, you're so spiritual and you help so many people. Why don't you give this person another chance? No.
Well, I think the way that you could answer that, maybe that our audience would understand, is because I've seen what this person is going to do to me in the future, and I
Yep.
know what they've already done to me in the past, and I'm not willing to subject myself to that again.
Yep. As after so many chances, it
Mhm.
becomes self-preservation. Really, it does.
Yeah. So, for our viewers who are watching us live, are there any questions that you have or anything that you want us to talk about this evening? We have certainly talked about a multitude of things today.
Yeah.
We've kind of been all over today. So,
And yet it all somehow connects. Isn't that interesting?
well, we just need a starting point, people. That's all we need. We don't know where we're going to end. We just need to know where we're going to start. So,
I had
it's, go
I
ahead.
had someone post something on social media and they attributed it to me. And I looked at it and I went, I didn't write that. And I reached out and I said, I don't think I wrote that. She says, I'm reading it out of your book. Oh,
I didn't write that. I channeled that.
but yeah, so that's the way the show goes. We just never know. I should watch back some of our earlier shows and say, I didn't say that. Oh, wait, I'm saying it right there.
I feel like sometimes we're in an episode of Spaceballs where they're fast forwarding and rewinding the movie to get to just the right scene. Sometimes I feel like that's an episode with us. We're just going to go wherever spirit takes us, and whatever we need to talk about might not be for somebody who's listening right now. It could be for someone who listens a year from now.
Yep.
You don't know why some of the things are brought up that we talk about, but at some point somebody's going to need to hear it, and that's why they're telling us to talk about it.
Somebody just told me to say that you do not, a soul retrieval is not something you have to have
Hmm.
in order to have a successful life. It's something that if you feel like you need, then you need it. But if you don't, then don't think that you're missing out on anything.
I had it because I was friends with this person who really wanted to have it, and then the person came, and she then was too chicken to have it. So she's like, "You're
Yeah.
doing it with the shaman." I'm like, "Okay." I didn't even know what it was at the time. I'm like, "Okay, I'm game." And little did I know, but it was in the beginning of my path, probably before I even took the first opening to intuition course. So, yeah.
Yeah, I had mine. I've actually had two because it was so much I couldn't have handled the first all of it in one. And it was it explained a lot. And I
Mhm,
realized how much I had been repressing. And I realized how badly treated I really had been.
mhm,
And you hear people say, you never know what goes on in families. The people who look the most godly on the outside can be horrific
mhm,
behind closed doors. And that was certainly my experience. And it started very, very early in this lifetime. And
mhm.
it got worse and it got worse and it got worse. And I was less and less and less myself. Because when you're a kid and you're so traumatized by the people who should be protecting you, you do lose pieces. They're like flying off in every direction. So it took two soul retrievals for me to
Mhm.
really get everything almost completely resolved.
I
And
was thinking I was thinking about, I had a past life reading with someone, and this is I annoyed her because we would journey to my lifetime. And I'm like, okay, got what I needed. I'm done. And I would go on to the next one. And she's like, we're not there yet. You need to stay here. And I'm like, why? I'm done.
yeah,
And so I just moved at a faster pace than she was able to. So I guess most people have like two in a past life session. Usually, I think I had like six because I just kept speeding through them. And she's like, "That's not right. You can't be going that fast." I'm like, "Well, give me one good reason why I have to sit at it at your pace."
Yeah. No, you
Needless to say, I only saw her once, but
yeah. Yeah, I had someone the first time I had a past life reading.
mm,
She really didn't know what she was doing, and she was just trained enough to let me see, certain things. But she did not go into it with, you're not going to feel anything, you're not going to, So I literally felt being burned alive.
mhm,
And she brought me out really quick, but not fast enough.
mhm.
It's like I came into this world knowing that had happened. I also died in the Holocaust, and I've been beheaded, and I mean, I have not had a life where I died of old age. Yeah, everything was always traumatic. I was always a warrior, and I was a monk a couple of times. I was a priest once. It just is very interesting to me how how do you really choose a teacher? How do you know that they are trained like they say they are? How do you know that they know what they say they know? And I've had a bunch of really bad ones. I've had some really bad experiences. And I think people watching us now and watching us in the future are going to have the same question. Um, what do you look for in a teacher? There is not a metaphysical university. I wish Harry Potter's world was real, but it is, it just isn't right now. So how do you choose a teacher?
For me, I choose them based on energetics and how I feel around that person. The issue is I outgrow teachers very quickly. It's like and I think that you need to be okay with it. Like the person, or you could think about it like a mentor in other realms. I think a good teacher is like a mentor. They help unlock the gifts that you already have. It's not about them showing off or things like that. It's about them helping you be the most authentic and genuine that you can be. And there actually are metaphysical universities. You can get
Somebody
degrees
just
in
said
metaphysics.
this is metaphysical university. That's what this is.
And I just want to go back to one of the other comments that one of our viewers meant. Those dang views of poverty really, or vows of poverty really
Yeah,
suck. And there's been a lot of us who've made those as well and have a really hard time with accepting abundance in this lifetime. And
yeah,
so looking at that and looking at what blocks you so that you can release it and move forward.
yeah, yeah. I bring up teachers because I've been doing this my whole life.
Mhm.
And it's funny to me how people post on social media that they can fix all your ills, and you must have a reading with me, and you must get energy clearing from me, and you must do this. And I look at those ads and I go, I've been doing that forever. And it kind of it the one that comes to mind, and I've been biting my tongue because I'm trying to say it nicely.
Mhm.
Um, about a year ago, about a year and a half ago, it was summertime. I had a class and I taught crystal grids. It was a basic introduction to spirituality kind of thing. And I taught how to look in yourself and find your own answers and all of this wonderful stuff. And not 2 years later, one of my students that weekend is professing herself to be this great almighty teacher. And I look at these ads and I go, yeah, okay. can't judge, not judging, not judging, not judging. And the whole time I'm like, I taught you, 2 years
Well,
ago.
for me, I guess in the way that I've been referred to, I mean, like the new nickname that I've given myself is no nonsense intuitive because I just think that's funny and it's so true to who I am. But the thing is that there needs to be teachers at every level because people who are just starting, we blow them out of the water. And that isn't my goal. I don't want to ever hurt anyone on the metaphysical path, and not everybody resonates with every teacher. So that there's different teachers who have different resonances. So my suggestion would be if you feel like you really resonate with this person, try it out. If after one or two sessions with them or one or two classes, you're like there's something isn't right here, trust that. Don't keep trying to convince yourself that you're wrong because this person is the teacher.
Right,
Most teachers will say their students teach them more than they teach their students. So if you're going in with a teacher who says, I have the answers for everything,
right,
that's a problem and a red flag to begin with
right,
because we're never done learning. None of us know everything. None of us are going to know everything till we cross over to the other side and aren't on this side of the veil anymore. So we still have a human brain that we need to wrap things around. So I'm always like, trust your gut, because usually your gut doesn't lie. Like if you're sitting in the class going, there's just something about this that doesn't feel right,
right.
honor that,
Yeah,
because I think that's how you learn is by trusting your gut. Like, I took some classes with teachers that I wish I didn't take because I'm like, well, all my friends are taking these classes. I want to try it. This looks like fun. And then I'm sitting in the class going, God, this feels awful. What are people getting out of this? And it's not that I'm being judgmental, it's that it just doesn't resonate with me. My frequency and my vibration was just too different. But for them, it was amazing and they loved it and it was great. And I completely supported them in it. It just wasn't a good fit for me. I
right.
had to find the people who were the right fit for me. And I'm sure you've been told this before too. One of the things that people love to say to me is, you're the teacher's teacher or
Yeah,
you're the healer's healer. It's like not that there's a hierarchy, but it's like you understand things that people like um some people are on an introductory level and like you're in 3 courses up from that. And not
right.
that it's just I've done a lot of studying, I've done a lot of reading, and I was so fortunate and blessed to have come back in this lifetime with all of my gifts.
Yeah, yeah. That's that's a big one for me too. Even though at various times throughout my life I've not wanted them, they're there.
I think that's a good place for us to end this evening, and we can continue talking about this. And again, if you're watching this, if you're watching it afterwards, recorded, send us your questions, send us your comments, send us your topics. We want to make sure that we're talking about the things that you would like to hear us talk about and what you would want to have a conversation about. So, thanks everybody for tuning in today, and we will see you all next week.
Thank you guys.
Bye.
Bye.